it's really a book about how we take where we are now in the wealth, I'd say the financial paradigm that we live in currently, and how we move through it to live into this as we're coming into this new energetic space of this new earth, this 5D the fifth dimension reality. Well, so this new wealth is like, what does that look like? And how do we bridge that gap? And how do we allow ourselves to shift our field, our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and energetic fields to match into this new level of wealth creation? I don't even say wealth creation. It's just this new way of living, right? This abundant, joyful, loving, blissful that you and I both know is happening on this planet right now.
Welcome back to the Rebel Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lester, and this is the show where we pull back the curtains on what we've been taught to believe about life and make our own rules to create a life that feels as amazing inside and out while doing our part to make the world a better place. And today I'm super excited to share with you a conversation with one of my beautiful friends, Miss Keri Norley. Hey, Keri, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, Erica. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so excited we get to do this together.
I love having these conversations with you, my dear.
Yeah, it's so funny because I was telling someone, or maybe it was another episode where I was talking about like, I have these conversations with my friends anyway. Just feels really juicy to like put it out there for everyone else to take part in.
I agree. I think that's the fun of some of these podcasts and like having friends that are in this, I'd say, influential spheres that we do have these conversations, which are so amazing. And it's like, I feel so grateful that we have these platforms to be able to give it to and share it with other people to and pass wisdom on.
Yeah, so beautiful. So beautiful. What a great time to be alive. I would love it for anyone who doesn't know who you are, if you could, give us a little insight into who you are, what you do, what you stand for, anything you want to share.
I would love to. Thanks. So I call myself a wealth alchemist, and I help you to recondition the way you interact with money and wealth. I help you to magnetize, hold, and grow your wealth so that you can move into the new wealth paradigm. I am an author, and I have just recently written my second book. And it's also about shifting the wealth consciousness of the planet and helping you to really step into a new concept of what money and the world could look like if we allow it to, and if we all come together to raise the consciousness of the planet, which is one of my favorite things talking to you about, is in so many aspects, that's what this time in life is about. And so I feel really grateful to get to do this work with people. I do one-on-one work group programs, all sorts of ways to work with me to help you to shift your money and wealth experience of the world.
I love talking about money. I love talking about money because here's the thing. We can talk about all the other things in the world, and until we start having the conversation about money and really shifting people's interaction with money and get the money into the hands of the people that actually give a shit about what's going on, we don't get to shift anything. And so I'm super excited to talk money, to talk financial systems, to talk new paradigm, like whatever gets to come through. I'm really stoked on this episode. And yeah, I think it's super important for all of us to look at our relationship with money.
Yes, no matter where we come from. And I think that's the journey that I've been on in this last little while, is that no matter where we have come from with money, whether you're from the super rich, whether you're from middle class, whether you're from broke, whatever, no matter where you've come from, we all get to this place right now, especially in this moment in time, where none of that actually matters anyway. And we all have our own, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It does matter. It's our story, right? It matters in the fact that it's our story and it's our conditioning to untangle. And we all end up in the same place at some point in time, looking at ultimately, when it comes to money stuff, worthiness issues, value, and it's all these personal places of the conditioning that we've had. And I find, coming from an experience of wealth growing up, and I can meet people who've come from an experience of having no money break coming up, and we can be in the same group dealing with the same exact freaking issue that's stopping us. And it doesn't matter. Money isn't the thing. Money is never the thing. It's our relationship with it, or our relationship with the availability to bring currency through our systems that allows us to have a different experience of money.
Yeah, it's so true, right? And it's interesting because I think I don't want to generalize, but I think for a lot of people, at least myself and people I've interacted with and my clients and stuff, there's almost this guilt around even having the money conversation. Like you're somehow less spiritual, or you're somehow less loving, or you're somehow less altruistic, or whatever, whatever word you want to label it with. Like even just having the conversation about money somehow makes you materialistic and less than. And so we've got this really weird relationship with money where it's like, I want money. I want to be able to take care of stuff. I want to be able to experience the life I want to experience. I also want to be able to give money to the causes and stuff that I want, that I feel aligned with. But I don't want to talk about money because somehow that makes me less than. And I have all these worthiness feelings around being able to have money. So then I either I'm receiving it and I can't hold on to it, or I'm blocking myself from receiving it because I don't even feel worthy to begin with. And it's like this crazy, like, not of of all the stuff that we get to deal with. And I love that you brought up the fact that it doesn't what you came from in terms of money doesn't necessarily dictate what your story is
Mm.
and what your relationship with money is. That's really a great awareness as well.
Mm. Yeah, it was a big awareness I had to come to coming from wealth, and the fact that it's interesting because and this is why it comes like this place, right? Like, because so many people who have this, who don't have money feel shame around the fact that they don't, right? Oftentimes. And they look to the people who do have money and they put all of this like energy towards, oh, it's so good to be them and all this stuff. And there's never any problems for them and da 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 da. And I'm like, but it's amazing how much shame I carried for so long of like, yeah, but in some ways I was ashamed that it was like I had things that were easier, or I didn't want to share this story because then I was going to not fit into the crowd, or no one was going to like me, or people were going to take advantage of me. And so there was all sorts of like stuff. Like, I mean, I didn't talk about my history for many years, 20 odd years, really. And because of that. And so it doesn't matter. Like, that's the interesting thing. And it took me a long time to be able to share the story, because I started to realize that like, it doesn't actually matter. We all actually at some level have some level of all of that, the shame, the validation, the value, the worthiness. Doesn't matter which way. And people are always quite shocked when I say that. But I'm like, it's true. It's true. It's like, and I think especially, and this is something I've been talking about recently with some other people recently, actually, is like when you start to talk about generational wealth, so many people expect that it's like just because someone in the family had it, that everybody then understands how to use it. And it's like the person who created it. And I think this is the thing about wealth creation. The person, like, as we go through these journeys that we go through as entrepreneurs and in this field, to shift our own money consciousness, to be able to allow ourselves to bring in the money that for our work, for our passion, for our purpose, there's an internal shift that happens to allow for that, right? And just because you receive it doesn't mean that you've also had that shift. And there's something that unlocks as we start to go through these. And I think that's the interesting piece of like this generational wealth of why it disappears, is because that piece doesn't necessarily get filtered down, right? And so it's like, for me, it's been a huge grappling my whole life, because it's like, it doesn't make sense that I should have this problem. It doesn't make any logical sense. And then there's this problem. I'm like, it's because I hadn't learned, like no one taught me that piece of it for my own, it's like, I understand money, wealth, like amazing, bring it on. Right. But like to create it for myself, or to have my own relationship with money, it was a completely different experience than, and it's still the same grappling, I'd say, that any other human, the same as any other human, same is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's so interesting to me because you're right. Like, but then when you really like start to dissect it, right? Like there's so many, I just lost the word. There's so many like opposites. That's not the word I was looking for, but it just went away. Of like, right? Like if you don't have money, then a lot of times the view is, if I had more money, I would be better off. Like I wouldn't have as many problems or whatever. But then you hear the opposite of that, of like, the more money you have, the more problems you have, they just get bigger. And then it's like, it's like this whole, like, we can't win. It doesn't really matter. And we know it doesn't really matter how much money you have. It really, at the end of the day, isn't anything about the money. But like, if you're trying to logically work your way through money and like wealth creation and all of that stuff, you can't because there's so much contradictory, that's the word I was looking for, contradictory like stories and information and beliefs and all of that stuff out there that you can't land anywhere because everywhere has some reason why that's not the place to be, right?
Totally. It's interesting because the thing that's been coming to me since writing this book. So the book is called, I haven't actually even like announced it publicly yet.
Ooh, I'm so
The
excited.
book is called, called The New Wealth, Magnetizing Abundance, Hoarding Your Wealth and Leaving a Legacy. And
Ooh, I love it.
yeah, thank you. Love that, land.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really, it's really a book about how we take where we are now in the wealth, I'd say the financial paradigm that we live in currently, and how we move through it to live into this as we're coming into this new energetic space of this new earth, this 5D dimension, the fifth dimension reality. Well, so this new wealth is like, what does that look like? And how do we bridge that gap? And how do we allow ourselves to shift our field, our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and energetic fields to match into this new level of wealth creation? I don't even say wealth creation. It's just this new way of living, right? This abundant, joyful, loving, blissful that you and I both know is happening on this planet right now.
Yay.
And yay, right? But the thing that I started to realize as I wrote it, and like it's a huge journey for me now to journey as I step into being the person who can bring this book to the world, is the addiction to struggle that we all have. And I really believe, like, as I started to look at this, and I'm like, I'm not going to say I'm like 100% behind it yet, but I'm pretty much there. Like, as I started to look around the fact that I think that as we move into this new reality, the addiction that we all have to break is the one to struggle. Right. And so when we look at this, whether, like you said, these, what was the word you used? Just said
Contradiction.
The contradictory, right? These polars, as whether you grow up with money or whether you grow up without it or anywhere in the middle, that there is struggle to it, right? And people will say that, like, there is I don't know, just different problems. I would say the more money you have, there's different problems, I would say. But when you start to look at that, it's like ultimately it's still that addiction to struggle that's holding us into any problems at all with money, period. Right. And so when I start to look at like what needs to happen as we move into this new, as we go through this awakening into this new realm, it's like, how do we break all of our addiction to struggle in every way, shape, and form?
I love that so much. And it's so true. And it's one I've seen over and over in my life. And obviously the people around me, the clients I work with and stuff as well. Like, it really, really is true. And logically, you can say all day, right? Like, I don't want to struggle, but we really are addicted to it. And it's interesting. First of all, I can't wait to read the book. Like, I'm super excited. I can't wait for it to come out. But I would love for you to go more into like, what does that look like? Because here's the thing that's really been on my mind lately. Like, as we're moving from this 3D into this more 5D consciousness, right? You'll hear the term New Earth, or, whatever terminology you want to use, the ascension of the planet, the ascension of humanity, all of that. We know that some of these things have to fall away. And our financial system as it stands right now can't support us in the current 3D reality we're in. So obviously this is not something that gets to come with us, luckily. So I would love to hear more from your viewpoint. Like, what does that feel like? What do you see happening? Like, anything you want to share around that?
I'm actually, it's funny because I'm just writing this part of the book. And I've been doing a lot of research around this, and there's some new, and I have to remember, like, it's really funny. I started to write it today. I was like, of course, all like the 4 names, the different things that are happening are like outside my brain right now. But even things like, I do believe very, very much, very firmly that we are moving into the crypto digital currency space. Yeah. And for a long time, it's been like so controversial and so unknown, and I wasn't even bought into it. Like, I'm not saying this from a place of like I've been all in for 8 years, because I haven't been. But I'm just paying attention now to where things are moving, and we have countries that are starting to, and I don't think people realize it. Like, to me, it's like in my face, right? Because I'm in this field looking at it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that people actually realize that there are countries now adopting cryptocurrency for their form of currency. Like, China is bringing it in and is threatening not being able to trade US dollars anymore. That freaking shifts the entire economy of the planet very fast, right? And the United States is bringing in a crypto, and like all the big major countries are bringing in their own cryptos. And since the 2008 crash, when Bitcoin was created, it didn't take off in the, I'd say, mass population, because there was no systems in place for the banks and for these governmental agencies or these big central banking systems to be able to do it and then, take advantage of this.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose all the money.
Yeah, exactly.
So now over these last 10 years or whatever, they have created their systems. And so now some of these banks are now having cryptocurrencies come through, or buying into, or moving their investors into the crypto space. So it's not really a matter of if, it's simply a matter of when, and it's coming fast. And so to me, the beautiful thing about it, and I think the thing that I'm starting to, I guess, again, I'm just new into playing in the space of it as well. But the thing that I think is really important is that people start to actually look at this very seriously and start to research, because eventually, as these countries once come out, people will mass be moved into that. And it's just this, in many ways, right? It's the same trap.
Yeah. It's the same system.
It's
just
the same
with a different,
because we're already in
yeah.
digital currency and the fiat currency, right? It's already digital,
Yeah.
realistically. There's not as much cash in the world as there are money and numbers in the bank accounts, right? And so I think it's important that people start to have this awareness and start to really look into these more sovereign ways, which is the beautiful piece of the crypto, is that we then create, as this new earth forms, as this fifth dimension comes in, as we look to create our own sovereignty. Then I think this is a really important piece of it, because it does mean you and I can transact and have our money and have no one else be in the middle, get to take any of our money. The government knowing, without banks getting their piece of it, it happens like that. And there's even currencies that we can make compounding interest. So we can actually be our own, like the banking system now that we currently have, they get the compounding interest off of our money. They're making money off of us every second of the day.
Yeah.
In some of these crypto spaces that we have the ability to create our own compounding interest and be our own bank in that way. Like we actually get to make money off of ourselves. And so it completely revolutionizes the way that that currency flows. And I think it's amazing. There's some other things too. Like there's this, and this is the part, like I can't remember how to explain it all, but like things like GESARA, GESARA, and basically they're looking at eliminating global debt. Like there's all sorts of really amazing new programs that are coming in beyond the digital space too, that, people are wanting to bring in universal currencies and all these things. And I don't know what will land of all these other pieces, I would say, that are kind of bubbling up around. I definitely know that, I don't see how digital currency couldn't. But these other pieces, I'm like, it's cool just to see these other little movements that are coming up, that are bubbling into the field of people or organizations that are being created for this infinite abundant banking system or reality that we can then be creating in the world.
And what a beautiful time to be an entrepreneur, right? Because like, like it gives you the freedom and the autonomy to be able to choose how you transact in your business, and like what are you choosing to invest in for the future, and how are you positioning yourself to move forward, which I think is such a amazing opportunity. I also feel like a lot of us, like, this is all relatively new to me, I would say in the last 6 months to a year. Like I've always known, not always, but I've known for a while that our financial system is pretty screwed up. But I wasn't consciously aware of like how bad the stack of cards really is, and like how amazing it is that we've lasted as long as we've lasted. And that while 2008 was awful, it was awful for me personally, and it was awful for a lot of people. It was like literally nothing compared to what could have happened. And it's actually kind of shocking that we recovered from the stuff I've learned since then. So, and not to be a total Debbie Downer, but I think it's important, like, for people to be aware. If you're going to be focused on creating money, you should be aware of the type of money you're creating and where you're creating it and where you're choosing to hold it, because you definitely don't want it all to to suddenly disappear on you, right?
Mm. Uh-huh.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be at the moment, for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, I think, in this next year to watch, it'll be an interesting ride to watch what happens over this next year after trillions of dollars have been printed and fake economy has been created, and they can't keep printing it, and the amount of unemployment that's up, and it kind of breaks my heart to really think about. But at the same time, I think it's important that we do bring this conversation to the table, because I think, like you said, money is not an issue or a conversation that people want to talk about. And when you put your head in the sand, and I think a lot of people, I think people went two ways during this time. They either got really creative and moved through and are creating new things, or people have put their head in the sand and have gone into fear. And that's ultimately the divide anyway between the 3D and the 5D, right? And I think it'll be really interesting to see how people pull out now, and to see how many people start to really shift around when they realize, like, this isn't going back. Like, we're not going back to the way things were, and that's a good thing. And we get to evolve through it.
Yeah. And it's like, I think that's the thing for me. Cause I love what you said about, like, that's the difference between the 3D and the 5D, right? And like, we know that things are changing, right? And the change is good. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some uncomfortable parts, right? In the ascension of humanity, in the moving into the 5D, into the really, like, stepping fully into our autonomy, into who we truly are, and like our full power and all of that, there is some uncomfortability in that process, because we have systems in place and a reality in place that can't go with us, right? That literally can't go with us. We have to stay here if we want to keep things the way they are. And while while New Earth is like this beautiful thing to think about and to move towards, we will have to move through some uncomfortable stuff. But I also truly believe that we each individually, right, we're sovereign beings. And so we get to choose, like, what we're available and what we're not available for. And part of that is understanding what's going on in the physical, and is positioning ourselves in a place that we can, limit the pain if we want to, and really choose, like, what is our transition going to be like, and really fully stepping into that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I 100% agree.
Yeah. So good.
Mm.
This is not exactly what I thought we were going to talk about, which is hilarious, because that's every one of these episodes.
We get a bunch of rebels on, it was never going to be what you thought, right?
Exactly. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, right? So I would love to go, like, deeper into, like, wealth creation. So the whole premise of the show, right, is like really pulling back the curtains on what we've been taught to believe. And I know that we have been taught to believe a lot of fucked up shit about money and wealth and creating wealth, and the things that we have to do to be safe and secure, which the whole fallacy around, like, needing to hoard money or needing to force money to be able to be safe is one that I personally have done a lot of work around over the last few years. But yeah, I'd love to hear from the Wealth Alchemist, which I love the title because it's so, like, fitting. Like, what's really on your heart to share around wealth creation and our money stories?
Thank you for that. It's interesting because what you had just said, this is what came to me, as we all just go with what's coming to me right now. And it's an interesting concept that you said is around hoarding money versus holding money. And I talk about this in the book, actually, because I think it is a really fine line. And as I wrote the book, this was the metaphor that came to me. And I was sitting yesterday as I watched this creek, and I'm in Denver, Colorado. And so we were out, actually just down the road. We have this little creek that runs a couple minutes from us. And we were just sitting as a family, skipping rocks and stuff. And I'm watching, and it was this perfect example of the metaphor in my book is, like, if you can imagine this in a river or a stream, right? We have a current that runs, but then we also have the eddies that are holding. But those eddies don't really ever just hold. Like, water still moves through them. It just moves through them much slower than the rushing water that goes through, right? And so I think of that in that analogy of, like, hoarding to holding, right? Because I totally get what you're saying. Like, for me, having grown up in wealth and like been taught to save for my whole life, hoarding, I would say, or holding has been a big piece of my life. That's what I was taught. But in recent years, I've had to learn that that's not necessarily helpful. Like there's been times like I wouldn't have met you. I would not have met you. I wouldn't have gone to my quantum healing certification if it wasn't for the fact that I felt like I had to hold and hoard, right? Because I think there's a point in which when we invest in ourselves, then that's a really important investment that we can make, right? And so I had to really learn the distinction between I've been told I'm supposed to hold on to this money. I'm only supposed to use it to buy a house and blah, 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 blah. And like all these, like be really strict around it to like, actually, if I invest in myself, it will return tenfold. And so it's like, to me, it's a bit like, yes, we get to hold it, but we also get to hold it lightly, right? We get to hold it in the fact that it's like, yes, we want to accumulate wealth because as we started talking about in the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about how you said something around being able to contribute more, to be able to give more back to the world, right? So in order to be able to give more, to be able to give more money, to give more time and give more energy, we have to have the amount of money behind us that supports us in our life, right? My grandmother she was a philanthropist. That was her job. And like she raised and gave away millions and millions of dollars. And she couldn't have done that. My mom was as well. Like my mom she's a chef too. But if I look at her greatest good in the world, it's being a philanthropist. And she too has raised millions and millions of dollars. And so you can't do that though. You can't raise it or give it really. Well, you could raise it if you were broke, but there's still an energy to raising millions of dollars. Yeah. Right. And so, but I mean, I look at somebody like Mother Teresa, she raised millions of dollars and right. But generally speaking, I'd say in this time and age, it's much easier with the energy that you would hold and the support behind you that you have enough to support yourself, that you're not worried about your own money, that you can give graciously. And so that's part of this thing, that so many spiritual people are like, no to money, but actually the greatest gift you can have in the world is allowing yourself to be abundant so that you can give more of all of the ways that you want to give. And so that's where the holding comes in, but not hoarding to the point of scarcity, because it's like, oh my God, if I spend this money, it's never going to come back and I'm going to be broke. Right. And there's a very big difference between allowing ourselves to receive that money, hold it, grow our savings accounts, grow our wealth creation accounts, and then allowing yourself to seriously, when you let money work for you and you have money coming in before you even wake up in the morning, it's freaking an amazing feeling in the world. Right. And it's like, you can't buy safety. And you said this too, right? Like, and this is something I've played a lot with lately, and especially when the market crashed earlier this year and a whole lot of my money got, didn't go anywhere because obviously it's coming back. But at the time, my bottom fell straight out from underneath me and I had panic attacks about it. And I was like, what the? And I realized that just having money, it doesn't make you secure. And I'd had way less money than that before too. But still, I was really used to having that safety net. And when many thousands of dollars disappear, it's a bit panicky, right? But that really showed me again that money doesn't give us the security, or our holding of the money doesn't give us security. And I've had these conversations with Hugh too once, and I was like, what would keep you, or what would allow you to feel secure, right? What does financial security or stability mean to you? And for him, his answer was, sorry, Hugh is my husband. I'm saying that to Erica because she knows him.
I know him too.
And for him, his answer was living on a block of land with a tree, on a self-made house, that everything's sustainable. We have a garden, and basically we can feed ourselves, right? We have a house and we can feed ourselves, which of course makes logical sense. Man, cave, got it. Yeah. Right? And I'm like, yeah, but babe, I want more. I'm an empress. I don't want just food.
There's a lot more I want.
I want internet. I want diamonds. I want lots of crystals. I want everything, right? And so I'm like, so I'm going to need more than that. So how do we create this? What does that look like from there? And the thing that I really came to, it's I remember hearing once, and I feel like I shouldn't even bring this name to the conversation, but I'm going to bring this name to the conversation. I remember once hearing this quote from Donald Trump, who said, he was walking down the street and there was a homeless guy there. And he's like, that homeless guy is $70,000 or $70 million richer than I am. I can't remember what it was. It's probably $70 million, knowing Donald Trump. richer than I am because he was that much in debt. Right. But
Mm.
like for him, he's like, but at the end of the day, he's like, his ability to recreate that money is himself. That's the stability. That's the security. And so when we come to this conversation about financial stuff and the sovereignty piece, right? It's like our ability to be able to generate currency, to generate wealth, to generate money is actually the stability, because who knows what's going to happen in this financial crisis. Like you said, like we don't know. Like we could
Yeah.
go to the banks one day and they I don't even want to put it out there, right? But that is a
Yeah.
reality that could happen, you
Yeah.
know?
It totally is a reality that could happen. And I think all of us, if we're not having an awareness around it, it's not because it's not in front of our faces, because of everything that's happened this year so far, right? Like we're seeing things no one ever expected to see, right? No one ever expected that this was going to be a thing. And it just goes to show like our idea of safety and our idea of normal, right? Like the normal world that we live in is based on very little history and is not predictive of the future. And so it's this, and this is true not just of wealth, but in general, right? It's this like starting to understand that everything that you need is already within you. The only question is like, where are you holding yourself back? Where are you buying into the things we've been taught, right? Like that's the whole premise of the show too. It's like start to question everything, figure out what's right for you, and support yourself in coming to a place where you are autonomous enough that you understand that you're safe regardless of what else is happening. And of course, right, we live in a physical world, so of course we could just take steps to create that, whatever that is, externally, that makes us feel safe and secure, whether it's the cave with the fire and the garden, or whether it's the cryptocurrency, so we can really experience the kind of stuff we want to experience. But it's understanding, like just like that quote, right? It's like it actually all comes from within you, and this idea that we have been fed that like you need the system to keep you safe and you need the system to keep you clothed and warm and all of that stuff is a load of shit as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, soapbox. uh, but I love, one of the things I wanted to unpack from what you just said that I think is really, really important is this idea of like you were talking about, and what came to my mind was like getting comfortable with money, getting comfortable with money in whatever form it is, so that you can hold it instead of hoard it, so that you don't like hoard it because you're afraid it's all going to be gone, or throw it all away because you are uncomfortable being around it or whatever. It's like get comfortable with what it feels like to create wealth, get comfortable with what it feels like to like have it around you, knowing that you're safe, not going out and like, and this comes back to the worthiness thing that you mentioned in the beginning, which is a big one for me too. It's like not feel like you have to go earn the right to have the money,
Mm.
or throw it away because you're not good enough to have it.
Yeah, it's a big one for a lot of people. And I guess like I think that I would say that in regards to that, if all we do to bring light to people in this conversation right now, if you're listening in, is to even just have awareness, right? Because I think a lot of people have no awareness of what their beliefs are around the situation to even begin to dive in. And so I do wealth alchemy sessions and I love them. And people come to me, like they bring me their money and wealth stuff, and like we totally unpack it all and clear it out in the quantum fields. And it's really interesting because yesterday I had someone who came and she was like, I don't know what my stuff is. And often like the people who come with like total da da da, and I'm like, well, and part of our work is to dig. So we can always dig. I can
Yep.
always get it out. There's never a problem there. But it's really helpful when you start to have the awareness around like, what is my relationship with money? What is my relationship with wealth? Because I think they're very different energies. What is my relationship with my own value? What is like, what does sovereignty mean? What does that, do you even know what that word is? Do you have a relationship with that? And to me, like sovereignty, when we talk about it, it's like, yes, it's around money, but ultimately it's our own ability to hold ourselves in every way, shape, and form, and to like feed ourselves. But I say that from like soul level, as well
Yes.
as
And the garden.
as well as physical lover, and have that garden. And so, like, what is that? Like, how do you feel about that? Do you feel that that you even know what that means in your life? Are you working towards that? What would that look like for you? And what's stopping you from getting there? And I think that's where you start to see uh what your stuff is. And like, as you said, we all have more and more and more. And like, it's been a huge journey for anyone who's doing this journey to start to see their own things. But I think when you really start to see um where your relationship with wealth is and holding wealth, your life will start to change, because a lot of people are teaching, and this is the piece that I've learned a lot since starting to talk about this. There's a lot of people who are teaching manifestation and receiving money. There's no one that I have met so far that's teaching this aspect around holding money, because it's a problem, because people start to bring it in, but then they still have nothing to show for it. So it's like you could go from having ramen noodles to living 5-star life, but still have nothing in the bank account, you know? And so what is that relationship? And it's just bringing awareness. Like, do you even want it? What would you use it for? You know, why are you not making it a priority? What's your relationship? And someone was recently talking to me about their taxes, and she's like, I just didn't, that's a big thing, right? I don't want to pay taxes. I hate paying taxes, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, actually, it's a beautiful thing. Like, you made enough money to pay more and more taxes, right? And
It
fall in
is.
love with that experience until it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Until there's no more taxes. The whole conversation around like the baggage associated with money is just so fascinating to me, because money has been a real teacher in my life. Like, I'm super good at relationships. I'm really, really good at relationships. I have amazing relationships with people, right? I'm in love with my husband, who's my soulmate. We have this amazing marriage, right? And so people talk to me a lot about like relationships, and particularly like, love relationships, right? And then, but for me, it's always been money. Money's always the thing that's like been the mirror, that it's not the only thing, but it's always been like front and center. And I've had plenty of money, and there's times we didn't have any money, but it's always like this, such an interesting reflection of what's going on inside of me when I start to look at like what's going on outside of me in terms of like my money story and stuff. But it's fascinating to me, like, what has been done to money and the energy of money to make it so like loaded for so many of us. It's just, it blows my mind when you bring it back to what it's really about, and then you look at like all the stories we've attached to it, and all the worth that we've attached to it, and all of the like, what does it mean if you have money or you don't have money, right? Like, we've blown it out of the water with all this other shit that has nothing to do with what it actually is anyway. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. And it makes me think, like, as I consider this concept of, right, of this new wealth, of this abundant society, every time I think about it, I feel like the word Mecca is what comes to me. This
Yeah.
Mecca of like abundance and riches, it's not even that it's like everybody's like filthy rich living in these mansions or anything abundance. It's like everybody is taken care of and they're full of love, right? And when we get to those basic, and I guess when we start to look at like humanity with basic needs met, and I mean basic needs including I am loved, I am
Hmm.
love, I am lovable, I love loving, right?
Yeah.
um then what's possible, right? Because like, why is it even a thing? Why is it even a thing? And like, this is the questions that I have about our world now. Like, why is it even a thing that we have the system that we do? Why are people broke? Why are people in poverty? Why are people living on the streets? It doesn't even make logical sense, because there's enough resources
Mm-mm.
on the planet for everybody,
Yep.
so it's like, why do we even have that? And if we all raised ourselves to a certain level and it was just like, that's just how it is, then what would the world look like?
We're about to find out. It's true. Like, it's so interesting because I love money. Like, I'll be the first. I write it out in my journal all the time. I love money. I do. Like, I love knowing that I'm taken care of. For me, it's freedom, right? It's the freedom to be able to do what I want to do it when I want to do it. And that includes like giving money to the causes that I care about. It includes travel. It includes, meals out or clothes or whatever, right? Like I don't have any guilt associated with wanting money anymore.
Mm.
That's a good that's a good thing to point out. But it's like, but beyond that, right? It is about like all of us having the freedom to know that we're taken care of, to know that, there's nothing really to worry about, right? Like we're fed, we're sheltered, we're loved, we're safe, we're all of those things. And ultimately the freedom to experience this life in the way that we came here to experience it.
Mm.
Whew,
Mm.
I'm in.
Boom. Yeah. I mean, like, I get the chills thinking about that. Like, wow, imagine if everybody's basic needs were met. Because that's what the stress comes from. So that's where our health issues
Yeah.
come from. That's where, speaking of relationship, right? Most relationship issues come from a lack of money and stress around money. But if
Yep.
everybody was taken care of and we didn't have to work 80-hour work weeks and multiple jobs and blah 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 and chase around kids and this and the other, what would life be like? Like, it would be like, I keep thinking of it. It's like this mecca, like this utopia of like, blissfulness. And
I love it.
it's something for me that I think about in our world, and how, you and I have spent a lot of money, a lot of hours, a lot of energy to learn to be able to bring ourselves to these places, to even have these conversations, and then to feel like, to be able to have these moments of blissful, abundant reality in our lives, right? It might not be every
Mhm.
single moment of the reality because we still crossing these bridges, right? But like, I think of how much time that has taken us, and I think, wow, imagine when the rest of the world wakes up to this.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody gets to live this way, and it excites me. It wakes me up every morning. It keeps me going every day. It keeps me on podcasts. It keeps me writing books that scare the living bejesus out of me that I'm going to be sharing with the world. It keeps me sharing
Yep.
this story. I'm like, I can't wait. I'm waiting for the day that my family finally starts to hear all these. They're like, oh my God, right? But this is the reality. And I have to remember that, like, and I think this is actually, I must be saying this now because I know some of the people who will be listening to this are also in the same position where we are speaking a truth that other people disagree with. And in this
Yeah.
time on the planet, like, you and I having this conversation is the minority, unfortunately. I look forward to
Yep.
the day that it's the majority. But it's going to mean that we're going to look like, that people are going to think I'm a little bit, "Ooh, what is she talking about?" But we still get to do that to bring people into this conversation so that hopefully this does, not hopefully, it is going to happen. It's just how many people come with it, right?
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because it's like, it's I believe that every one of us that is stepping into this, is doing the work, is having these conversations, is looking at what truly is possible and what truly is real, and no longer buying the party line, or choosing to limit ourselves based on what we've been raised to believe. Every one of us who steps into that, there's like a tipping point, right? Like eventually we get to a tipping point where it's like, okay, for those that are willing, it's easier and easier to get there, right? Because there's more of that energy behind that. And the other thing I wanted to share is like, I'm sitting here interviewing you on a podcast that I created. I'm putting my voice out there, and we're having conversations that most people aren't having, like you said, right? I never wanted to be in the spotlight. I didn't do this. I've not done any of this. I haven't built this business because I wanted people to know who I was. That was never something that I was interested in. And I can remember when I very first started this business and people were telling me, like, you have to be the face of your business. Like, if you really want to get your message out there, you have to be the face. You have to get on video. You have to post. You have to put pictures. I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't do that. Like, I was terrified. And now it's gotten to the point, obviously it's gotten easier because I've been practicing for a few years, but it's like at some point, the thing that's within you, that's important to you, that matters to you, is so important that you'll do whatever you need to do to bring it to light. And for me, that means I got used to being in the spotlight, right? I got used to being the face or the voice or whatever. But it also means that what it doesn't mean is that when I do this, there aren't times where I'm like, ugh, I can't believe I'm going to say that. or I can't believe I want to put this out there, this conversation, right? Like there's still things we've been talking about in this conversation where for a second I was like, oh, there's a little contraction. I'm not sure I want to be the one saying this out loud, right? And so I guess I'm on this rant to just encourage anyone who's like feeling a pull towards whatever it is, right? Like just get comfortable in the uncomfortable, knowing that if it's pulling you forward, there's a reason, and that you have a whole tribe of people who are out there doing the same thing. And it doesn't mean we're comfortable doing it.
Not at all. I can totally relate to that. I totally relate to that. Like there's like, I'm like people look at me a lot and they're like, well, you're such an extrovert. I'm like, no, I'd rather just be in my bed, shelled up in a hole. And actually when I went to write the book, I was in Breckenridge in Colorado for a week. And I put myself in a condo and it was 15 minutes from either Frisco or Breck. And I was like, so it was far enough away that I didn't want to leave to go. I wasn't just going to walk out to one of the little cute villages, get, dinner or anything. And so I holed myself up for a week by myself and it was like heaven. I was like, and this would go to show I'm not as extroverted as people think. And no, I don't really want to be. It's true. It's like, I could quite happily support other people's visions for a long time.
Yeah.
But when the message comes and the message comes knocking and it's like, it's time to to do a podcast. It's time to write a book. It's time to It's time to go put your thoughts somewhere. That's universe, that's soul, that's all of us, in co-creation to help us to deliver this so that, I think more and more of us are waking up and moving beyond our own fears around it because we know that the mission is bigger than ourselves.
Yeah. It's so true. It really is bigger than ourselves. And I will be the first to tell you that ignoring when soul is knocking doesn't work out that well.
Ever.
I tried for like 20 years. It just gets louder and louder
until something really bad happens.
Maybe like 15 years, but it was a while. Yeah. I can be stubborn. I've gotten better.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I'm glad you got better. That's how if you hadn't gotten better, we wouldn't have met.
That's right. And I'm sure glad we did, because if we hadn't met, we couldn't have this conversation. And it's been awesome.
It's been awesome. It's been very good.
Well, this has been amazing, Keri. I would love to ask you, because like we talked about at the beginning, right? Like it's whatever gets to come through. Is there anything that's really feeling present on your heart to share that we haven't already covered?
I guess I'd love to leave everybody with this thought of the world is ours to create right now. And we all have an opportunity to choose love or fear at the moment. And for me, I choose love. And for you, I know you do as well. And I invite people into that. I invite people to, again, it's this, we bring back the addiction to struggle, right? So allowing yourselves to like take this tight grip on the struggle that you've had for your whole life, which is not your fault, and do not beat yourself up over it, because I did that one too, right? I started to realize this year how addicted I was to struggle. No matter how much I had been working on all of my stuff, I've been coaching for 14 years, right? Like, and I've still got struggle in my life. How is that even possible? And then I started looking around. I'm like, no, we all do. That's what's kept us locked into this matrix, right? And so instead of feeling shameful about it, it's like, no, I want to talk about it and say, hey, everybody, wake up to your struggles and realize you didn't put yourself there. You're not like a bad person for it. Don't feel ashamed that you're still here, no matter whether you're at the beginning of your personal development journey or you're 20 years into your personal development journey. It's like the perfect time to wake up to all the struggles that you're still holding on to and choose differently, and realize that the world has been created the way that we have it currently in this paradigm to create struggle, to create debt, to create fear, to create anger, to create war, right? Like that's what this paradigm is about. And you can choose differently. And the more of us that choose differently, then that becomes the reality of the world. And so it literally is a choice, because as much as you're buying into the fear, scarcity, struggle, all of that stuff, you can just as easily put your energy into buying into abundance, bliss, joy, love, and all the wonderful things of this mecca that is the new wealth.
Mm, that's so good. I'm so glad that's what came through. So good. So good. So good. So good. And you can choose in every moment, right? Like there's still times where I get stuck in the fear where I'm like, ah, crap, I got sucked into Facebook and now I feel like, bleh. Well, just it's so key what you said about not like judging yourself, because that just feeds the cycle, right? Like just choosing love. Every time you have an awareness around it, just choose love. Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. Well, I sure appreciate you coming and having this conversation and being willing to, push the envelope with me a little bit.
I think we did push it today, my love.
We
I think
we did, which is a underlying intent of this podcast in general. Like it's definitely a stretch for me. So so good. So thank you for helping me with that.
Thank you for
And
having
I think
me.
there's some amazing stuff in here for our listeners, which I'm super excited about. If somebody wants more of you, if they want to work with you, if they want to follow you, like where can they find you? What do you have going on? Obviously the book.
The book, yes, the book is coming, so that should be out in the next few months, The New Wealth. You can find me on my website, KeriNorley.com. My favorite place to hang has been Facebook on I'm Keri Norley 1, facebook.com/Keri Norley 1. And yeah, that's the places. I've talked about too, like doing wealth alchemy sessions. So there's some really fun programs that I have around instant manifestation. Yeah, just come in. Ultimately, I love, like, for me, it's like Facebook's where I put all my, you'll learn all sorts of ton stuff around wealth and money and expanding into the new experience so that we can create in this world if you come and join
Yes. And you're fun.
me. Thank you. Oh, there's a Facebook group too. Elevate.
Yeah.
Elevate your wealth. You can come and check me out there too. Just type in elevate.
Awesome.
Elevate your wealth, and you'll find me on Facebook.
Who doesn't
It's a
want that?
right. It's a fun group to chat about money and wealth creation and staying in that high vibe energy. So
Love it. Yay. Thank you so much. Yeah, you guys should definitely go find Keri. She's got so much more to offer. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please go rate, review, subscribe. We love to have your support. I thank you guys so much for being here. And remember to let your inner rebel come out to play. And until next time, have a beautiful day.